Well, ladies and gentlemen, we have plenty of updates to get to here today. This one's going to be regarding the mail-in voting, specifically in the comparison to 2020 and what we're seeing right now. A lot of positive movement, and now the narrative is being created that maybe Wisconsin is starting to be a big problem spot for Democrats. If that's an issue, this is going to be a very, very hard election for Harris to win. People are hearing that the Sun Belt, we know, looks amazing for Trump, possibly outside of Nevada, and even Nevada looks good. Where Trump would only need one more electoral vote if you win all of the Sun Belt. But take a look at this. Early voting, red flags for Democrats. It's truly eye-opening. Percent of total 2020 early vote turnout. So this is the percent relative to what they performed at totally in 2020. There is some different variables that have to be taken into account when it comes to this. We knew the Democrats' turnout was going to be down in terms of the early vote because so many of them were scared of the pandemic. And now they're going to be day of voters, but I don't think it's going to make up this difference. You've got PA Republicans, 89.5% of their 2020 turnout. These are not even the final numbers. We do know 2020 there were going to be more people early voting. Obviously, you also have Trump now telling people to vote early, embracing it to get more voters. But still, you're talking about a 34% advantage over Democrats when it comes to the people that voted early in 2020 versus 2024. In Florida, it's 24.5%. In Arizona, it's 20%. I think Republicans are straight up winning the state of Arizona by like 4 or 5 points in terms of the early voting. I haven't seen the update on that, but the last time I checked, it was like that. Nevada is basically 50-50 right now, which is a great sign for Republicans. You can see they're plus 17.5. And in North Carolina, they're plus 16. What this means, GOP is very close to actually hitting their pandemic totals of turnout in the early vote, and the Democrats are not, especially in Pennsylvania. And that's why the Democrats' firewall in Pennsylvania has been cut into like a third, where it was 1.1 million. Now it's like 380, 390K at this point. They had a 1.1 million early vote advantage in Pennsylvania going into election night, which seems crazy, right? But obviously Republican day of turnout is going to be better, and it's still going to be better this year. That's why I understand Republicans with the fear-mongering thing about men needing to vote, but it was really a double whammy. And I'm not trying to say Trump's going to win the election. People need to vote, but I'm just saying when you analyze the data, women tend to vote earlier and they vote more than men. Now, we don't want it to be that big of a discrepancy. Normally, it's like 53-47, something like that. But it's like a double whammy because they already do more early voting than men, and then they vote more than men in general. So it's like that's why we were seeing a lot more women vote than men with the early voting, and there was that narrative that was being created. But there's going to be a lot of men that do day of. They go to the polls on Tuesday. That's just how it is. Even still to this day, most people are going to be day of voters. That's just the reality. It's almost like we overemphasize the early vote. It is important, and these are good numbers for Trump, but this doesn't, guarantee Trump a victory because he's overperforming in all these states. You still got to turn out day of. There's no doubt about that. But this just shows you the difference and the discrepancy. And listen, did I expect it to be this drastic? It's impossible to compare because we don't know with all the variables. When you compare to 2020 and the pandemic versus no pandemic and the Democrats' viewpoint in 2020, they wanted no one to go to the polls. They said, everyone should early vote. They were very scared of the pandemic. Republicans, it was the complete opposite. It was, we don't trust the early voting. We don't trust mail-in. But the early vote in person, that's something Republicans have been doing a lot of rather than the mail-in. But either way, these are very, very good numbers. There's no doubt about it for Republicans. It's not like guaranteeing Trump a victory, but it is very good numbers. You also do have this. This is the Atlas Intel poll, and this is a very, very good thing to look at. So this is Atlas from July of this year throughout August 30th, their final poll. As you can see, there's very little movement. Now, Atlas was the most accurate pollster in 2020 when it came to this exact thing. We're just talking about the generic popular vote, which is what this is. Their final poll was Trump at 49.6%. It had Harris at 48.2%. So it's a little over a point in terms of Trump's advantage. That's just the popular vote. If that happened, if Atlas was very accurate again, Trump's going to win the election and he's going to win the popular vote. But the other key thing, and listen, you can't just say, well, because Atlas was very accurate in the midterms and in 2020, they're going to be the number one most accurate pollster. Again, that's really not how it works. But it's interesting how the most accurate pollster in 2020 has very little deviation from July. These are consistent numbers. You're not seeing, the Gallup Party idea, I like it, but you're seeing massive swings in that, and we'll see what the final numbers in that are. But with this, it is basically straight lines. Now, it's gotten a little bit closer. Trump had a little bit bigger of a lead, where it was like he was up by 3 in terms of the popular vote, which I don't think he was ever going to win the popular vote by 3. But, to me, that's a realistic result, 49.6 to 48.2. So it's another interesting thing and an interesting data point to look at. It's not just the final Atlas Intel result, it's also the idea of them being consistent from July through October 30th. They've got basically the same overall result in terms of their popular vote. This is the thing, they were most accurate out of any pollster. They were like 0.3 off. They were number one out of any verifiable pollster. So there is that as well. You've also got New York Times seems to be alarmed why Trump has a more plausible path to the presidency in 19 maps. Well, yes, even liberals have to admit this. And that's why there's the big narrative around the Rust Belt, because she's cut herself off. She very likely is losing. I mean, you can see this map. It depicts the easiest path for Trump. It's Pennsylvania, North Carolina, Georgia. But the problem for Harris is their campaign has very little chance of winning Arizona or Georgia. They're looking bad in North Carolina. So you've pigeonholed yourself into a few different combinations. Whether or not you win Nevada, you could still argue it's 50-50, although I think most non-biased people would say it's a slight Trump lean right now. If you were forced to pick, I would certainly say it's a Trump lean by about half a point to a point at least. It's a very close state. I agree with people, but still. And so that's why they're like, well, you look at the Rust Belt, but she's an underdog in Pennsylvania. So I mean, she loses Pennsylvania, it's going to be, I think if she loses Pennsylvania, it's going to be extremely hard, because you look at Pennsylvania, Arizona, and Georgia, those three states alone, that puts you right up against it. You win Nevada, the election's over. And by the way, that's not even including North Carolina. North Carolina looks very, very good for Trump as well. To me, not as good as Georgia and Arizona, but even liberals are admitting, and listen, this doesn't mean 1,000%, well, Trump has more paths, he's going to win, but he's got a better chance than her. If you've got more paths to the White House that are more, and that doesn't even include the potential sleeper flips, which would be a Virginia or a New Hampshire with Trump campaigning in Virginia. And we saw New Hampshire polls yesterday with Harris up by 1, Harris up by 3. They're within the margin. These polls are very, very close. We all knew that. You've got this. My reporting is that she is in trouble in Wisconsin. So we do hear these rumors from different sources, 2 Republican, 1 Democrat, who have said that it looks like they'd be surprised if she won Wisconsin. There was also someone yesterday, another source, that said Trump was looking very good in Pennsylvania. Now, do these sources really mean anything? I mean, nobody's really going to remember this one way or another on election night, let's be honest. Oh, because sources said, it's like, but listen, I guess it's good news. You'll take it if you are Trump, or if you are wanting Trump to win, possibly struggling in Wisconsin. I certainly think Wisconsin is definitely more conservative than Michigan, and I still think Trump can win Michigan. But to me, it's like Wisconsin and Pennsylvania especially, but also Wisconsin are definitely states that Trump is leading right now. Liberals would disagree. They'd say she's leading in Wisconsin. I would disagree with that. I think Trump's the favorite in Wisconsin, and I would even put Pennsylvania, Trump as a very slight favorite right now, as a solid favorite in Pennsylvania, and a slight favorite in Michigan. You can see, look at this. We're seeing the makings of a Dem turnout disaster in all of Arizona, Georgia, North Carolina, and Nevada. It's true, none of these states are likely. The pivotal ones, well, no, they are very pivotal. I mean, those states are extremely pivotal. If Trump loses those states, it's going to be very, very hard for him to win. I mean, the Rust Belt is extremely important, but the problem, if you lose these states and you're Harris, you have no margin for error. If you lose one of the Rust Belt states, you're done. If you lose New Hampshire, you're done. So the states do matter. And even Nevada matters, especially with different combinations where, there's certain things. If you split the Rust Belt states, Nevada could come into play and it could matter. But no, I mean, I agree. I think what we're seeing is the Sun Belt looking really good for Trump. And now the liberal narrative has become, well, we're going to go all in on the Rust Belt, but it doesn't really work when you're losing Pennsylvania like you are. And really all of the Rust Belt, I think she's probably going to lose. But you've got Trump, he's rebounded. There was a lot of people, they look at this, and there's definitely been some swings in it. It's at 59.5 right now, so it's basically 60-40. We'll see what ends up happening with this. This is the Poly Market Update. It's just betting. And, I've explained this many different times, but this is just a reflection off of the polls. There's been more positive polling for Harris from 2 different pollsters, CNN and Marist, especially in the Rust Belt. And that swung the polls a little bit. And there's also another dynamic when it comes to betting where Trump got up to around a 66-67% chance to win. There's diminishing returns when you bet on Trump and you look at the polls. I mean, is it really worth betting Trump when he's got bad odds? When he's got 67% chance to win, you're not getting a good return there. With Harris having a 33 or 34% chance, you're getting a much better return. So a lot of that is factored into this, and that's why there was more money dumped on Harris. But you could also see, because of the way Poly Market works, people sell their Harris shares after they went up a little bit. Like if you buy Harris at 34, you sell her at 40. You can make money that way as well when it comes to something like this. But you can see Wisconsin's basically a pure toss up. Michigan at this point is a slight Harris lean based off of some of the recent polling there. And then Pennsylvania is a state we're really looking at. Trump sitting at 56. I don't think that's accurate. I think there's kind of a fake surge there. I don't really understand why Trump would be going down in Pennsylvania. To me, it's a lot of media. They're releasing polls with Ohio with Trump +3. It's total crap. There was going to be like this Iowa poll that was going to be really close. And it's like they're releasing the last weekend. If it was 2 or 3 weekends ago, okay, maybe we look at it. But we've seen consistent polling in Ohio, Trump +7, +8. I even think that's a bit low. But now it's like the final 2 days. Oh my God, now we get a poll in Ohio that's +3. It's just suppression. It's ridiculous. It's very hard to believe that. And certainly I think Trump's going to win Ohio by 8 or 9. But that is the update, the early voting. The numbers compared to 2020, we knew they were going to be significantly in favor of Republicans, and they are. And it's just going to come down to day of turnout. And obviously, early voting definitely matters, but it's also the day of turnout. We can't make predictions based off the early vote. You can make inclinations and projections, I guess, like what's happened in Nevada with the early vote. And it's swinging to Trump. What is it at 63, 64? Still at 63, 37. But guys, that is the current situation we have with the early voting. That's going to do it for this video. Make sure you follow me on X. Link to that's always in the description.